I have flown as far as Terran or Heron fly, clear to the polar waters and returned. I have run the roads of land and sea and sky, right around the Earth's horizons. So I learned that there are two directions, out and back, from the still center of the compass rose. There are two places, home, away. I lack a map that shows me anywhere but those. Guess what that was? That was a
That was
poem.
awesome.
That is a poem not written by me. And it's a poem written by
I like it.
Elaine Chen Chow. So I posted later. But
You
point
did a
is,
fine job. I think I'd like to have that one. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
it seems pretty. Okay, so back to.
Oh, wait. What's going on?
Okay, this is great, right? Look, I am like in space now with orbits and everything. You're listening to Shen. That's me. All right. What are you watching? SG2 on Space, the only weekly space show. Apologies. Last week we missed out. Hey, but you know what? We're back on track this week. This is episode 206, and we're talking about the science of GPS. Before we go on, I would like to say support the show at patreon.com/SG2 on Space. Thank you for Kyle Baker, Sam Welsh, and John Graves for your kindly monthly donations. I'll keep that ticking in the bottom. And of course, thank you to my former producer, Jim Ra, for all these years. With all that said, the disembodied voice in the background, let's bring him on board, shall we? You, Leonard. Nobody can hear you. You chose to mute yourself.
Okay.
Out of all times. Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Yes. Hey, Shen.
Hey, like your headband, as always.
Thank you. Yep.
You know, if it's your persona.
Yeah, I guess. So,
all right,
here we are. I mean, we're back again.
I have this crazy like metal band shirt with this astronaut getting destroyed by like a bunch of space debris. By the way,
I see.
So
I see.
I'm not really actively promoting this band since they just scream a lot. But I really like the shirt, so I bought it.
And you're not promoting space debris either, are you?
I'm not promoting space debris either. There's like a giant eyeball too. There's a giant eyeball with like space debris going through it, and an astronaut's spacesuit got.
Oh, that's hideous.
Well. Yeah, it's a really terrible scenario for everybody.
Oh.
So.
Yeah. What?
With all that said.
So what brings us together this fine Friday evening? Do you know what today is? April 12th. April 12th.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, is the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. But I could be wrong about that. You might want to.
So if the Titanic had GPS, they would have never have done that.
If
right?
They, I don't know what the captain of the Titanic was trying to do there. It's been a mystery to me.
Well, so let's see here. It's actually April 15th.
April 15th. Okay. Maybe April 12th was the day they sailed. I'm not sure.
But
I think it's also the anniversary. I think it is the anniversary of Lincoln's the president's assassination.
April 12th. What is important about April 12th? Let's see here. Okay, well, a lot of stuff in the past.
President Lincoln was shot on April 12th or somewhere around that time.
Let me see. Lincoln. Apparently, it's not exactly April 12th then.
No, maybe not.
But it might be somewhere around this time. I mean, there's so many people who lived and died. I mean, you can't go through all of them.
Yeah, but Lincoln was, a great president and
birth, death. That would be in the 19th century. Nope, not today. Oh, Charles.
Well, never mind.
That's interesting. Monsieur Optics, French astronomer and academic.
Oh.
Died today, or not today, but like this date, I should say.
Yeah. Well, anyway, what did you want to talk about tonight?
Okay, want to talk about GPS, global positioning system.
GPS.
Remember?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Sure. And you're like, I'm ready to talk about it. So here I am asking you, what is this thing? I mean, we all of us with smartphones, we just like, oh yeah, how do you go there? Just use your GPS.
Use your GPS.
I think most people don't know what is actually happening though.
I think maybe that's true. I actually do know quite a lot about it, and I've even done research in GPS. I've developed technology for the GPS system, and so I probably am a good person to ask about it.
You're a very good person to talk about it.
Yeah. So its origins go back to like the early 70s, about 50 years ago. When the United States Department of Defense, they had this idea, or some of the advanced research projects, and certain individuals at MIT and at Stanford realized that they could use microwaves in space with what they call high precision clocks, atomic clocks, and very precise modeling of satellites in space. They can transmit a signal that could be received on the Earth and then used to sort of triangulate on the position. So the thing about the GPS is that your receiver, which everybody has, I got one. There's one in your phone. Who'd ever think that you could do that in the phone? It's receiving signals from a set of satellites that are in fairly high orbits, and so that's what it is. And it was initially restricted just to the military because they wanted to use it for, military things, so, like tracking of missiles and so forth. One thing I found out recently was maybe most of our listeners probably don't remember this, but I remember it very clearly. In 1983, there was a Korean airliner. It was called Flight 007, which didn't have anything to do with 007, James Bond or anything, but it was a disaster where this Korean airliner, a 747, it flew into Soviet airspace in the Pacific. They were lost. They were off course, and the Soviets, did what Soviets do. They shot it down and killed all the people on board, and then they lied about it, and it was a big scandal in the United Nations and all that kind of stuff. At the time, the
navigation mistake made by the crew, the airliner drifted from the plane route, flew through Soviet prohibited airspace. I see.
Yeah. I was a young adult at that time, and I thought it was pretty outrageous, as did most everyone else. Well, anyway, the president at that time, who was a guy, there's a guy named Ronald Reagan, who was president at that time. As a result of that incident, they decided that they would make it available for civilian use, and that was sort of the origination of that procedure where we'll have the satellites. So what it is like the GPS system is a set of special satellites. There's 24 of them that are in place all the time. They're in 12-hour orbits. A lot of people will tell you that they're in geosynchronous orbit, or they think they're in low Earth orbit and that kind of thing. But they're in 12-hour orbits, which means, and they're set up so that they kind of optimally cover every place on Earth, and all of them are transmitting a microwave signal actually a series of microwaves, at several separated frequencies, and your receiver is tuned to those frequencies. Each of those signals has a code on it. It's like a pseudo-random code. They even call it PRN, which is pseudo-random number or sequence or something. So each satellite has its own code, and then your receiver has a replica of that code, and it will lock on to each of these, as many satellites as it can, and it will use the timing in order to develop a range. So you have a range to each of the satellites, and then the software inside your receiver backs out a position. So it's just like and so that's the That's what the GPS system is.
Is this it?
That's it. Yeah.
Wow.
That's not it. That's a picture of it, and they're not nearly that big. I mean, you wouldn't even be able to see them on that scale. So, but so I've actually worked on the software, certain software for inverting those equations, where you get the receiver will deliver ranges to you, and then you and what the receiver has to do is it has to model the satellite position. So in the satellite signal, there is not only a measure, kind of measure of the distance to the satellite, but there's also a code that tells you the characteristics. It basically, they call it an ephemeris, and it tells you where the satellite is to very high precision. So you can back out. I think people understand this. It's like I have a position to each one of those satellites, and one of the hard parts about it is that the timing of the signal is ambiguous. So your receiver doesn't have a clock in it that's accurate enough to actually figure out what the range is directly. So it becomes an extra parameter that your receiver, the software, the code inside of your receiver solves for. So you need a minimum of 4 satellites. Why 4? Because you need to also solve for that clock bias. And
let me see. Does this say it? So number 1, travel duration from pallets to the base of the system. Oops.
Yeah.
And then measure distance using the travel time of a radio signal, which is the speed of light.
Yeah.
Measure travel time. GPS needs very accurate clocks. User needs to know the satellite's location. As the GPS signal travels through the atmosphere, it gets delayed.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I don't know if I said that, but I meant to say all of that. I think I said all of that. You need to know the satellite's position very, very accurately. The satellite itself basically tells the receiver where it is. So it has some modeling information in it, some satellite ephemeris information that allows you to tell it where the satellite is to very high precision. You have to worry about things like how much the Earth has rotated in the transit time, the time it takes for the signal to get from the satellite to the receiver is on the order of like 70 milliseconds or 0.07 seconds. And you have to worry about that. You have to correct for how much the Earth has rotated in that period of time. There are things having to do with satellite signal propagation through the ionosphere, because the ionosphere is a region of the atmosphere that is electrically conducting, and it causes some dispersion and delay, some time delay, which is variable. And there's 2 things that can be done about that. There's some modeling information in the satellite signal that some receivers will use. The other thing is for if you have a dual frequency receiver. So the satellites are actually broadcasting traditionally. They broadcast at 2 frequencies. They're introducing a 3rd frequency. In the current epoch of time, but 2 frequencies, and the 2 frequencies have different dispersions through the ionosphere, and that information can be used to very accurately back out what that time delay, the ionospheric time delay.
Using 2 different frequencies?
Yeah, there's 2 different frequencies. One's called L1 and the other one's L2. They're both microwave frequencies, but they're slightly different. And so the difference in the delay times, what they call the dispersion characteristics of the ionosphere, can be solved for very accurately if you're observing the time delay. You're observing 2 frequencies, the signal from 2 frequencies. What you have to know is that there's like a code that's impressed on it. It's like a sequence of 1s and 0s, a signal, and that's that pseudo-random signal. So all of of the satellites are broadcasting at the same carrier phase frequency, but that there's a modulation on top of that carrier frequency that encodes a lot of information. So some of the information is this random code. The receiver can replicate the random code in order to identify which satellite it's talking to, and then in addition, there's some signal information about the ephemeris of the satellite. So I know I've been talking a lot and probably a lot of words, and I don't know if I'm communicating.
I mean, it depends.
Yeah.
Probably some people understand you.
So, yeah. So, another thing you can do is you can do double. What you can do is if you have two receivers, like one of the things I worked on recently was we have a satellite on a spacecraft and a satellite on another spacecraft, and the other spacecraft transmits its and these are called pseudo ranges. It'll collect its pseudo ranges.
What is the pseudo range?
Pseudo range is the range that is the distance to the satellite plus whatever your clock bias is.
Okay, go on.
Clock bias is your error in your clock, right? So you need to solve for that. So if you have two satellites, if you have two receivers, like actually they don't need to be in orbit. They could be on the ground. They could be like at at a base station, and then in the car 50 miles away. And then you can take both of those pseudo ranges and you get a delta, what they call delta range. The difference between those two can be used to observe the difference in the relative locations of two receivers, and so you can very accurately to get relative positions. Extremely robust. One of the advantages of that kind of positioning is that you can get rid of all the common mode errors that are along the path to the satellite, because you're subtracting those two. So anyway, that's the engineering components of the GPS system involve precise orbit monitoring of where the satellites are, and the government does that. They very carefully, they're constantly monitoring these satellites and making sure that the ephemeris information is updated so that they're useful.
Is that what you mean, like the three parts: the satellites, the ground control, and the user equipment?
Ground control, yeah. So they're constantly maintaining those ephemeris parameters, and they transmit them up to the satellites so that they know that. Then there's atomic clocks. So atomic clocks, I believe they're using some of the quantum mechanical properties of certain kinds of elements. One of them is like cesium, and another one's rubidium, and these have very, very highly precise clocks that are accurate to nanosecond. Nanosecond is a millionth of a second, and actually the light will travel about a little less than a foot in a millionth of a second. So that's why you have to have those so accurate. Have to have very accurate clocks, and they maintain all that synchronization. And then there's like a geodetic system, like a system of coordinates that they have to handle. All of the calculations for the orbits, for the calculations for the GPS system are done in what's Earth fixed frame, which means that if you're moving around, you have to worry about like non-inertial stuff. For space-based system, you do the calculations in Earth fixed frame, which means you need the Coriolis force and the centrifugal force, and that was kind of like an original contribution that I made to that field. All right, I don't know if it's original, but it was. And so anyway, that's the GPS system. You have to worry about a lot of stuff. It's orbit modeling and atomic clocks. What?
What is this? Possible position with 3 GPS satellites.
Oh well, so I think it's kind of like straightforward. It's like if you have three satellites, then the satellite will define like a sphere, right? So your position and where the satellite is a radius, and so if you have three satellites, then it's ambiguous. There's you can triangulate, to where your position is. Now, I don't know why they have possible position of the receiver is where all three of the signals are
If you have
together.
three, you just imagine three spheres. So you
Three
calculate the
spheres,
distance, right? You can figure out
right?
the distance.
If you have
So
two
here,
if you have,
here.
yeah. So if you have three,
Two
if you have three
spheres. Go ahead.
yeah, if you have three satellites, you should be able to determine your position exactly. But you
Okay.
can't because you have this clock bias, the clock error. So you really need four satellites, and that's something you can't really draw. You can't draw a picture of that because it's like 4 dimensions. So some of the interesting, some of the one of the algorithms that you use for this kind of backing out involves it's that all of the engineering people, they like to use jargon, and they like to name it after people, and so it's like a triangulation algorithm that was published by a guy named Bancroft. And so everybody says, I use the Bancroft method, oh yeah, that was cool. It's really neat. You got the Bancroft method, and you keep hearing this word Bancroft method all constantly. And you go, well, what is it? I go, well, it's the Bancroft method,
What is this? Well, I found.
Well, interestingly, I got into it, and it's actually special relativity. It's using the interval, but the engineers don't know it. It's like this guy Bancroft is really smart. He actually kind of figured out how to do the 4-dimensional calculation to triangulate using basically the special relativity interval. But he does see that. You see where he goes x squared, y squared, z squared, and then minus PR. So that's the time delay. So physicists look at that and they recognize an interval. So that was one of the things that was interesting to me, was that he was able to. It was like yeah.
You're saying this is special relativity?
It actually is, but nowhere do they mention anything about special relativity. It's almost like a parallel. It just seems like it was developed in parallel for a very practical solution to triangulate on a satellite, on a receiver's location from pseudo ranges, where you have position, the coordinate and the time. And it's how do I say this? It's like Bancroft recapitulated Einstein's methods, and it's not clear that he knew about Einstein's solution. So it was like, it doesn't. I don't think that paper mentions Einstein or special relativity. I could be wrong about that, but this actually isn't the. I don't think this is the version.
No, this is somebody else's paper.
Yeah,
but his original paper did not mention.
I don't think that this. And it's a very practical. It's a very good paper, and it tells you how to implement this algorithm to do a solution.
So you get where you are, the receiver position.
Now, what I use that for was to start the solution, and then I improved that solution to get a position and velocity using velocity observables as well. And I did that through what they call least squares. So I had multiple ranges, not just 4 ranges, but multiple ranges, and I put them all together to get a deterministic solution. And then maintaining it, I had orbit mechanics. So as the vehicle, as we orbited, we're continually getting pseudo ranges from the satellite, and I updated the state doing a process called Kalman filtering, and I don't know. So I don't know if the users. So that's another interesting.
That's another topic we can go into.
We might. I don't know. I don't know if our users. I don't know if our users,
Our users,
our watchers,
our audience,
our viewers, our audience would be all that interested in that kind of arcane stuff. But
suffice to say, this Bancroft method is utilized to do what? To figure out where you are, right? And what
to figure. Well, it's one method to it's one kind of clean method to give you a solution for your position with at least 4 satellites, and so what I used it for was to start the solution, so that I didn't have I didn't have any problems with the least squares. There's the other algorithm is least squares, and that's a more conventional approach to the problem. And so, yeah.
The other one's least squares, but
least squares. And then that requires more than 4 satellites, 4 and more satellites in order to solve. And I'm able to solve for the entire state of your vehicle with the position and the velocity all at once. And then if I have fewer than as I'm propagating through time, I use a Kalman filtering technique, which is I take the previous state, whatever state I have, I propagate it to the new position, using the orbit physics, like a gravity model, gravity, and whatever else I need, gravity and the Coriolis rotation rate,
right, all
of the Earth. So I propagate to a new solution, and then I have measurements, and the measurements come in and they update the state, and so that's least squares. I didn't see that paper. I didn't really read a paper. I just did it. So, I mean, there wasn't any paper to read about the least square, but that's what I've done.
Right. And you were smart enough to do it. To do it that way.
So, yeah. So, it's fun.
Wow, fascinating. Thanks for elucidating.
You think? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about the GPS. Let's see, what else can we talk about with the GPS?
Well, we're hitting near the end of the hour.
What?
We're hitting near the end of half an hour.
Yeah, so that's GPS, and it's amazing. It started, 50 years ago, and it became fully operational about the end of the 1980s. And President Reagan said, we're going to use this for civilian use. And then it became fully operational. It became really fully operational by 1980 or early 2000s, when the president ordered that it just be made available in the most accurate form for use. So now other countries, there was a war between Pakistan, or a little brief outburst between Pakistan and India, I think in the mid 90s, the United States cut off the GPS availability to those two countries, so they wouldn't be able to use it for precise positioning. And so what that caused is, like, a whole lot of other countries now, like Russia and China and Japan and Europeans are developing their own systems, for very similar systems for their own GPS. Like the Russian system is called GLONASS. I don't know what GLONASS is. Means something, and so forth.
There's
ordinary GPS receivers. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no. GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, QZS, and IRNSS from India.
Yeah. So that's what kind of started that, was because the United States could restrict access to it, and so other countries other countries that wanted to have their own independent means of navigation. The GPS receivers are by law restricted. The ordinary ones that are available, like in your phone and whatever, they will not operate above a certain altitude or at a speed faster than something like 400 meters per second.
Why is that?
And I think the government, the Defense Department, or Homeland Security, or somebody doesn't want people using them as guidance systems for rockets.
I see.
You can use it for that, but the technology is easily applicable to drones. So that's something all new we've got now. So that's what I know about the GPS system.
Wow.
I just recently that little bit of history about KAL, the flight that got shot down in '83, which I remember very clearly. I mean, I have very, very clear, practically fresh memories of that. And even though, so it's sort of weird for me, so it's something that I remember clearly, and that the people all around me, they don't remember it at all. So it's almost like I am from another planet. But I remember that clearly, and I just recently learned that was the thing that stimulated the proliferation of GPS for civilian use, which I thought was interesting.
No one else remembers that?
You didn't know about it, did you?
Well, no, but I was not mentally aware at that time.
Well, but the funny thing about that is, Shen, is that I even talk to people who are my age and they don't remember it.
The KLA
007.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the explanation for that is.
1983.
Yeah. So
maybe I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. Yeah.
So what ended up happening was the planned flight path was a dash line, but the actual flight path was this line.
Oh, you just got me on the You're not.
Oh, I'm not even sharing. Okay.
Yeah, you're not sharing it.
Here, there.
Yeah.
God, that's what you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. It was Korean Airlines, and it flew over the Sakhalin Peninsula, and the Russians decided to shoot it down because they were very nervous they were paranoid.
A lot of paranoia. So instead of going here, if they had GPS, they would have followed the planned flight path probably.
Yeah.
All airplanes these days have GPS receivers.
Now we have GPS. Those days they had inertial systems, and I think that the investigation came to the conclusion that the pilots had accidentally keyed in a slightly different trajectory, and so they were just a little off course, and over time it carried them over a hostile place, and the Russians were on edge in those days because there's a conservation group called Greenpeace.
Mm-hmm.
You may have heard of them, and they had a ship where they were always they were activists, and they were always against whaling, and so they had actually landed in Russia, in eastern Russia, about 3 or 4 months before the KAL plane was shot down. They actually landed there, and they followed the whale hunting people, and they were and found that they were taking the whale meat and feeding it onto a mink farm. You know what a mink is? Like in the old days, people used to kill minks to make coats out of them. Oh, a mink is a little. It's like a little animal with a beautiful coat. It's like a ferret. A mink.
They would kill this guy for fur?
Yeah, they would. So they were raising them on a ranch, and they were using the whale meat to feed these things, And the thing is that this kind of fur is extremely valuable. It's a very highly, a mink coat is like thousands and thousands of dollars. We don't make mink coats anymore because, I mean, look how beautiful this animal is, and we
You have to skin it alive. I mean, not alive, but you have to kill
they're
it.
not. Yeah, they have to kill these and then take their skins and make coats out of them, right? So like a mink coat.
Yeah.
Well, so the Russians were had this fur industry, and they were using the whale meat to feed this. So they were killing whales, and then they were making mink, killing little animals to make mint. So they're just killing stuff. And so Greenpeace had exposed this, in a kind of like a terrorist, not a terrorist, but like an invasion. They actually landed in Russia, and on their ship, I forgot the name of the ship. And so this was a few months earlier, and I surmised that this really put the Russians on edge, and so they were that event probably contributed to them shooting down the plane and killing over 200 people, including a U.S. congressman.
Right, I saw that.
There was a U.S. congressman. I don't remember his name, but I do remember. And it happened, I think, in September of '83. The thing with the whales and the mink happened maybe 3 to 6 months earlier.
September 1st, 1983.
Damn, I see. I
got a good memory.
Yeah, I got a good memory. And then I learned recently that the KAL flight, that's what's kind of it didn't. The GPS system was just coming online. It was well under development at that time, but the idea was the military was going to keep it secret. They were going to keep it for themselves as a a strategic advantage. But after the utility of it for navigation was so obvious and so apparent that the government decided it was really a presidential order to make it available, and it took a few more years for them to get it all ready, and I think by '89 it was available for civilian use. So anyway,
wow,
that's all I really wanted to say, unless you had some other kind of questions about the GPS system.
No, not in this capacity, but hey, we did a good show. We can talk more about aliens next time. I'm tired, I want to eat.
Okay. Oh, sure. Okay.
Yes, this is to our viewers. Yes, I am proclaiming that I need to eat. With that, what do we have to say for our viewers from 10,000 years in the future?
Oh, they already know about the GPS system, and they have something they're using. You know what they're using? They're using pulsars in the future, where they triangulate using pulsar.
Pulsars.
Yeah, that you can navigate with those too.
Okay. Why are we not doing it already?
We do. There's something called very long baseline interferometry that can be used.
I'm wondering.
We can talk about that sometime. But I actually, we'll figure out something to talk about next week if we do the show next week.
It sounds like a plan. In the meantime, everybody, I don't know why I just did that. But hey,
I don't know.
I always had.
This is your gang. This is your nerd gang sign.
This is my nerd gang sign. Yeah, sure. Let me do that. Okay. Remember to look up because you never know what you'll see. Not that
That's right.
Oh, can you see the GPS satellites?
No, they're 17,000 miles away, and they're about the size of a car. So. They're big satellites, and they're solar powered, and they have atomic clocks, and they transmit at microwave frequencies, and they do not receive anything. They do not receive anything from your receiver. Your receiver is completely passive.
Right. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they do. Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. The end.
Good. Okay, the end, so to speak.
Great show.
Thank you, everybody. We will be, like you said, youtube.com/SG2/streams. Look up SG2 on space. Support us, patreon.com/SG2 on space. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
all of it. And if you have questions, be sure to post in comments. We do read them. I haven't seen any, but feel free, even if you're not watching this live. So, and to people 10,000 years in the future, I'm sure you're wondering why we're still using such an antiquated system, but it's okay. I mean, we're getting there.
We're antiquated,
Yeah, that's why.
So,
I mean, look how Leonard does this.
Yeah, you got to cut us some slack. I mean, it's like, look at this apparatus I've got, and then the headband, that's out of style, for the past 50 years, but from 10,000 years in the future, it's all an instant in time.
You're right. So like everything's out of style. It doesn't matter.
And if you are watching us from 10,000 years in our future, send me a message.
Ooh. Send you a message back in time. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens there. This is an invitation here as a chat. Right. You guys have the technology. Yeah, send us a message. That's for sure.
All right,
everybody. Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Salam. Good night. Mwah.